Time for our political panel now. Liberal MP Tim Wilson and Labor MP Anne Ali. Welcome to both of you. Thanks so much for being on the line for us.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for having us, Matt.
Let's start on the former Prime Minister's press club speech today. He went thermonuclear on the subs deal, saying Australia has proved it can't be trusted. France believes it's been deceived and humiliated, and she was. This betrayal of trust will dog our relations with Europe for years. So, Tim Wilson, can we be trusted?
Yes. The reality is we signed up to a contract. The contract no longer met our needs. We advised the party in the contract, in this case France, that we were no longer entering into the contract, and we're honouring all parts of the contract. So
Malcolm Turnbull kind of elaborated on that precise sort of explanation, saying on the day of the deal we said it was okay, and we sort of said it was okay up until the point where it didn't suit our needs anymore, and that kind of betrayal will be looked upon by other countries and say, if they can do that to France, they'll do that to us.
Well, I note Mr Turnbull's comments. I mean, the nature of contracts is that it's two parties coming together for mutual benefit. I mean, you have Australia working with France on many issues, as well as other European nations on many issues. We're currently in negotiations, people are aware, with a free trade agreement with France. We work with other countries as it suits our interests, but the role of the Commonwealth Government of this country is to stand up for Australia's national interests, to take the tough decisions to secure Australia's national interests, and I would be horrified if anybody thought that that wasn't the basis in which we should make our decisions, what's in our national interests.
Anne Ali, do you think France was hard done by here, and do you think it's going to damage Australia long term?
I think it's already damaged Australia in terms of our relationship with the French. They've withdrawn their ambassador from Australia. I think what Malcolm Turnbull raises today in his commentary are some interesting points, specifically around how the deal was handled, not so much the substance of the deal per se, but how it was handled. You know, informing the French with a Mon chéri Macron text message certainly isn't good diplomacy, and in my mind shows a lack of judgment on the part of the Prime Minister. It certainly has done damage to our relationship with France. It's yet to be seen what kind of damage it does in our trade relationships with the EU, but also regionally as well. You've got Malaysia and Indonesia questioning the deal. We really needed to put in that effort in building those kinds of alliances and those friendships. You know, for me, it's a matter of, yes, we should be building our alliances with the US and the UK, with which we have a kind of a historical, cultural kinship. But we also have near neighbours and near friends, and we can't, it can't be an either or. It needs to be an add-on. This AUKUS deal, this AUKUS framework needs to be an add-on to the kinds of relationships that we have, and we need to be keeping our attention and our focus on other relationships as well.
Yeah, and Malcolm Turnbull revealed that he'd spoken with Emmanuel Macron, and apparently our government, Dantin or the Prime Minister, can't get any contact with the French government. What does that say?
Well, I think that says a lot, doesn't it? I think, that if people are using terms like, Australia can't be trusted, that the French feel that they're being betrayed, I think that's quite serious language that's being used there, and I think we ignore that at our peril, really. We have a role to play regionally, we have a role to play internationally as good international citizens, as good partners to different regions in the world for our own national interests. As much as anything else. So we've got a lot of ground to make up, I think, with the EU and the French. France has some sway with the European Union, and I think that needs to be kept in mind, particularly for future trade agreements.
Yeah, the former PM also discussed climate change. He says he will attend Glasgow, but Prime Minister Morrison yet to make his decision. Tim, firstly, should Scott Morrison attend, and what message does it send if the former PM is there but the current PM is not?
Well, Mr Turnbull, I've no doubt will be attending in a private capacity because he, respectfully, like all former Prime Ministers, has no official role. And I'm focused, as the Prime Minister, I'm sure, is focused on what we need to deliver the right policy outcomes to reduce Australia's greenhouse gas emissions. Who goes off to sign the bit of paper in Glasgow is, from the government, frankly, to me, is a secondary consideration. If it were a choice between having somebody go to Glasgow but not deliver the right policy outcome, or have the Prime Minister here doing the job, delivering the right policy outcome to address greenhouse gas emissions, keeping Australian jobs, and making sure we have the framework to take Australia forward, I'll definitely go with the latter. And I think this is, we all look forward to the opportunity that we can go overseas, and particularly in privileged positions, to be able to fulfil important functions. But if the Foreign Minister or the Energy and Emissions Minister goes to represent Australia, that's actually often how these things work, and entirely appropriate and an important part of considering what we need to do, because there's more than just one job of the Prime Minister, despite the protestations of the Labor Party. The job of the Prime Minister includes dealing with this issue as well as many others. And we need to remember that every time the Prime Minister goes overseas, he then needs to commit 2 further weeks in quarantine, as he's doing right now, having just returned from the United States.
Yeah, and just on the former Prime Minister, because it's fair to say he's been routinely critical of his successor, Scott Morrison. He didn't even affirm whether he was going to vote for the Liberal Party at the next election. Tim, should he reconsider whether he wants to be a member of the Liberal Party anymore?
Oh, look, I just leave these things to him. He's a private citizen. He's entitled to say whatever he wishes. He's entitled to vote ultimately however he wishes. But I'm going to keep encouraging people to vote Liberal if you care about the issues around driving economic growth, improving our natural environment, stewarding a cohesive society, and making sure you have a government that stands up for Australia's national interest.
And Ali, I guess Labor is not, it's not unknown for Labor to have former leaders who've been critical of subsequent administrations. Malcolm Turnbull, though, do you think that he should have said that he's going to vote for the party he's a member of?
Oh, like Tim, I think that's up to him. But on the matter of the Prime Minister going to Glasgow, just on the message that sends, we have Boris Johnson standing up and, saying that the future is green, even making lame jokes about Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy. And meanwhile, we have Scott Morrison, who ridiculed the 2050 targets and thought it entirely appropriate to bring a lump of coal into Parliament. So again, because of a series of bad calls and bad judgment calls by our Prime Minister on this topic, we have some serious ground to make up, and Australia is being left behind on the world stage when it comes to climate change. I think that not going to Glasgow sends a very strong message, and that the Prime Minister really should reconsider the fact that it means something. That message is important for Australia and the world stage to have the current Prime Minister there.
Can I just go to a couple of the big things that are happening at a state level today? Firstly, in New South Wales, the government's announced it's going to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 50% of 2005 levels by 2030, on its way to its own 2050 net zero target. Tim Wilson, why has the state Liberal Party been able to get the Nationals on board, but the federal government is divided on it?
Well, I don't think that's a fair characterisation at all. What the state Liberal government has done in New South Wales with the National Party is map out a target and then map out a plan about how to get there. And the responsibility is different between a state and a Commonwealth level. And we're seeking to do exactly the same path, develop a clear plan for how to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and get them down to a net zero position. And, of course, a plan without a target has no credibility, and a target without no plan has credibility. And that's one of the challenges that the Labor Party has, is they're all big on targets, but they're not prepared to present a credible plan, whereas that's exactly the approach that's being taken by the New South Wales Liberal National Coalition government, and developing a plan towards a target is exactly the same plan we're taking as a federal government. And we're immensely proud of that, because we want to see emissions down and jobs up, because that's the basis in which you take the Australian community with us sustainably to deliver outcomes, versus the Labor Party, whose record is they want to have emissions down but they want to increase taxes or taxes up. And of course, last time they went before an election, they said they don't want a carbon tax under a government they lead. They then broke that promise. We're about tech, they're about tax.
And Ali, I'll get you to
got
respond.
that one in, did you, Tim? Oh, well, first of all, Matt, let me just say I think it's an entirely appropriate characterisation that you gave there, and an entirely appropriate question to Tim about how the New South Wales government is able to bring in the Nationals but the federal government isn't. Secondly, Barnaby Joyce has said there is no plan. So, you know, I don't know where Tim is coming up with this plan. Perhaps he should ask his leadership to verbalise and articulate that plan to Barnaby Joyce. You know, we saw Scott Morrison cede responsibility for COVID to the states. And now it seems that he's ceding responsibility for action on climate change to the states, once again ceding responsibility. So if the New South Wales LNP can do it, you know, Scott Morrison is busy trying to wrangle the dinosaurs within his own coalition to do it. Enough talk about a plan. Let's actually see it.
Yeah, just on that point though, Anne Ali, your home state, WA, the Labor state there doesn't have a target for 2030. It wants net zero by 2050, but it doesn't have a target of what to do by 2030. Do you think they should adopt one as well?
Well, they probably should. You know, I think the idea of 2050, having a target by 2050, I think is a good idea. But increasingly, the world is talking more about 2030, and I think that's where we need to start focusing our attention on a plan towards 2030. And I think New South Wales, what the New South Wales government
Labor
has done
doesn't.
to be,
Federal Labor doesn't have a 2030 target.
Tim, I'm talking.
Yes, federal Labor doesn't have a 2030 target.
Here he goes again. Goodness, Tim.
Federal Labor doesn't have a 2030 target.
Take the interjection after Anne Ali has finished her answer.
Yeah, we're not in question time, Tim. Save your interjections for then.
I'm not the speaker, but you go on.
I think what New South Wales has done is good, and I think it's a good model. And I think that other states should follow suit. But importantly, I think that leadership also needs to be shown at the federal level from the LNP government.
Okay, so Tim Wilson's. I'll speak for you here, Tim, just to get it straight back to Anne. Where's Labor's plan? If you're all about, you know, targets and...
Now, that wasn't my question. My interjection was, Anne just said that the state government should have a 2030 target. The federal Labor Party doesn't have a 2030 target. Now, the federal Liberal government, coalition government, has a 2030 target, but Labor doesn't. It's a pretty reasonable question.
We have a plan. Anthony Albanese has very clearly articulated our plan for renewables, for transitioning away from
What's your 2030 target then?
From fossil fuels. He's articulated how much
What's your
investment
2030 target?
into transitioning away from it. So, you know, we have a plan and it's been very clearly articulated, Tim. Maybe
What's your 2030 target?
Reading. Maybe read a book.
Okay, what's your 2030 target?
Sorry,
What's your 2030 target?
So,
hang on. No, sorry. What is your 2030 target?
What is your response to, does the Labor Party at a federal level have a target for 2030?
Well, it's something that we're working through. So, you know, it's okay to be able to say, yeah, tick, great, other states have got a 2030 plan, and say that we're working through it, Tim. You tell me what yours is. And I'm not going to go through this with you, Tim, where it's our plan versus
was agreed to in the Paris Agreement.
You're in government, and you have failed to have a plan till now.
I've got to talk to the E-Safety Commissioner about child safety online, which I really want to do. But let's just agree we're both waiting on some plans from both of your parties in hopefully the near future.
But only one party is in government at the moment.
Okay.
And Matt, just finally, 2 weeks ago, Anne was on this show and she said she would disclose the details of her declaration of interest related to her superannuation fund.
No, I didn't.
And 2 weeks later, she still has not done it.
Are you still on that?
Yes, you did.
On that?
Sorry.
Still going.
No, sorry, you did. You said it to Patricia Carvelis. 2 weeks later, you have failed to disclose the details of your secret trust.
You've given me some homework to do. I'll go back and have a look, and we can sort this out at another time. Okay, so Tim Wilson, Anne Ali, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.